When I started working as an assessment and evaluation specialist at Lincoln Public Schools District Office, I decided I wanted to figure out how to give good advice to teachers about assessing and grading. I consulted with a former student of mine. At that point in time, he was teaching at North Star High School, teaching a group of students who were labeled at risk. His name is Alex. I walked into Alex's classroom with my laptop in hand and a very carefully prepared list of questions. We sat down, and I was about to launch into my first great, carefully prepared question, and Alex interrupted me. He said, "Mr. Mack, I really hope this doesn't offend you, but what I learned in high school, mostly, was how to get an A. I want something more than that for my students." That question floored me, and it got me thinking about the difference between real learning and the game of school. The game of school deserves a serious rethink. You all know the game of school, even though you might not call it that. We play the game of school when we enter a learning situation, and we become more concerned with accumulating points and getting a grade and winning rather than any of the learning that's going on in that classroom. Some of the language we use about school reveals some of the elements of this game. What did you get on that test? What did she give you on that project? How many points did she dock you for it being late? Can I get extra credit for bringing Kleenex into this class? We know the game of school isn't real learning. The game of school isn't like a video game. Teachers don't zap learning into students. Learning isn't something that happens as a nice side effect when we go for the points and try to get an A. Real learning is transformative. Real learning changes something important about us. Every day in classrooms, teachers work with students who know that they can't. I can't do math because I'm not a math person, or a reader, or a writer, or an artist, or an athlete. Every day, teachers work with students who are convinced that they can't. Those teachers get those kids to try one more time, and they give them the feedback that they need. And when the student uses that feedback, the student sees that they can. They can do math. They can read. They can write. They can be an artist. They can be an athlete. Learning changes us. Comparing real learning to the game of school is like comparing true love to the number of likes you get on a post on Facebook. This game of school gets played on a larger scale outside the four walls of the classroom as well. The No Child Left Behind game of school is exactly the same game writ large across an entire school or an entire district. The No Child Left Behind Education Reform Act and other education reform acts like it are about accumulating points and winning. In this case, the points are averages on statewide achievement test scores, and if your average for different groups on the statewide achievement test scores rise above a certain point, you win, and your prize is you get left alone. If they aren't above that certain point, you lose and you get labeled needs improvement. The only factor included in this evaluation, in this judgment about a school or district, are those points, those averages on statewide achievement test scores. Think for a second about how weird that is. The weirdness of the idea that we could summarize in a useful way something as complicated as teaching and learning with a single thing. Add to that weirdness generalizing that across an entire school or district and narrowing it down to a single factor. The only thing that gets included in this evaluation, this important public evaluation, are averages on on achievement test scores. Why would we ever think that's a good idea? Why would we ever think that simplification and boiling down gets us to a useful summary? A lot of people don't think it's a good idea. The measurement experts I work with in the assessment evaluation office, Measurement experts have been telling us for a long time that whenever we make a complicated decision, an important decision, we should bring in multiple factors and multiple measurements and tell a complex story about a complex thing. Other people don't think this is a good idea. Think about the last sports conversation you participated in or overheard about who the best team was or who the best player was from a certain era. These are not short conversations. These are not one-factor, simple-sentence conversations. Multiple elements about context and history and win-loss record and factors and injuries get brought into those conversations. I bet you don't think this is a good idea. If somebody asked you right now to describe your favorite teacher, I doubt that you would pause and look off in the distance and mumble 96.3%. You would tell great stories about that teacher and the experiences that teacher helped you have. Teaching and learning are complicated. Schools and districts are complicated. They deserve a complicated story. Unfortunately, playing the No Child Left Behind game and other education reforms like it have consequences. These are headlines retrieved from a single day off Google News using the search terms U.S. public education. The No Child Left Behind game is rigged so that in some districts and states, there always have to be schools who are labeled failing. That makes great headlines. Those headlines eventually can contribute to a sky-is-falling mentality about U.S. education. People can get the impression that failure is widespread and rampant and pervasive. That sky-is-falling mentality has real consequences for students, schools, and districts. The fear of public evaluation, inappropriately narrow public evaluation, can drive forces within learning. Schools can feel pressured to narrow all the incredible experiences they can provide for students down to just what's measured on the test. Important learning experiences can get de-emphasized or even pushed to the side in favor of test preparation. The worst consequences of the sky-is-falling mentality might be what it does to our ideas about teaching and learning. Teaching and learning can be narrowed to a simple input-output system. If they just did this, they would get this at the end. We know that teaching and learning doesn't work like that. No teacher can give learning to students. Bam. Teachers set up contexts that help students create their own meanings. The No Child Left Behind game of school needs a serious rethink. If we want to think about and tell the story across a school or a district about student achievement, maybe we can tell a complicated story. You and I can remember this, and we can remind others that when they're thinking about an entire school or district, maybe we should be bringing many factors in. Absolutely, part of the story should be averages on statewide achievement test scores or other tests like it. They give important information for specific decisions. But maybe we can include other factors as well. Maybe we can include parent satisfaction. Maybe we can include college and career placement. Maybe we can include innovative teaching strategies. Maybe we can include student perception. Maybe we can include how happy graduates are after they graduate. Maybe schools and districts can get involved in telling their own story and their own strengths and weaknesses. You and I can also push back on the game of school. We can remember that the game of school isn't the same as real learning. That's why I'm proud of my colleagues in the Assessment and Evaluation Office, because every time we get a chance to talk to parents or students about score reports in official score report letters, we try to remind them that this score isn't the whole you. A score isn't the complete picture of who you are and who you want to become. We can rethink the game of school for ourselves and help others do so. My favorite definition of teaching comes from John Steinbeck. John Steinbeck said, "I have come to believe that a great teacher is a great artist. Teaching might even be the greatest of the arts, because the medium is the human mind and spirit. If we remind ourselves of the artistry involved in teaching and how difficult it is to evaluate artistry, we can remember how humble and how cautious we should be when we assess and evaluate teaching and learning." I want to finish my story about Alex. After Alex told me that what he really learned in high school, mostly, was how to get an A, I took a deep breath, and I closed my laptop, and I started listening really carefully. It turns out that talking about teaching and learning is mostly about listening and less about presuming that you know the answers before the conversation starts. Every day, teachers in classrooms help students create their own meanings that will change them for the rest of their lives. I think that simple sentence describes something that's human, vital, and beautiful about our lives. This is not a game. It's teaching and learning, and it's way too important to play with. Thank you.